There's a stack of records somewhere in most houses in this country, tucked in a closet or a basement, and most of it is exactly as ordinary as it looks. But every once in a while, one specific pressing of a completely common album turns out to be worth thousands of dollars, and the difference between the ordinary copy and the valuable one usually comes down to something small enough to miss completely. My husband has boxes of records with absolutely no system, no idea what's actually in half of them, and zero interest in fixing that anytime soon. So I went looking into which specific pressings are actually worth real money, and a few of these stories genuinely surprised me. Start with a band almost everyone knows. Rush put out their very first album in 1974, and before any major label picked them up, they pressed about 3,500 copies themselves in Canada on a tiny label they made up just for that release. A radio DJ got hold of one, played it on air, and within a short stretch of time the band had a record deal. If you find that early Canadian pressing, not the major label version everyone owns, but the original small label one, it can sell for $1,500 to $2,000 in good shape. Not because it's impossibly rare, but because there are just enough die-hard fans chasing a small number of copies to drive the price up fast. Then there's a story that's stranger and honestly a little funny once you hear it. David Bowie's Diamond Dogs cover originally showed him lying down as part man, part dog, and the record label looked at the original artwork and quietly decided a certain anatomical detail needed to disappear before it hit stores. So they airbrushed it out, and that's the cover basically everyone has ever seen. But a small number of copies went out before anyone caught it, with the original unedited artwork intact. Find one of those, and you're looking at somewhere around $5,000 to $6,000, with rumors of private sales reaching into 5 figures. That same instinct, catching something before the public ever saw it, is exactly what makes the most famous record cover story in music collecting worth understanding. The Beatles' Yesterday and Today came out with a cover so controversial, the band sitting there surrounded by raw meat and doll parts, that stores pulled it from shelves within hours. Rather than throw away the printed covers, the label just pasted a tamer photo directly over top of the original artwork. Most of what survived has that paste-over intact, never peeled back. And here's the part that surprises people. The ones nobody ever peeled are worth more than the ones somebody tried to uncover. An untouched paste-over in good shape runs $5,000 to $6,000. If you're ever holding one and wondering whether to peel back that top layer to see what's underneath, don't. You'd be destroying the exact thing that makes it valuable. That same idea, a mistake the label rushed to cover up, shows up again with Bruce Springsteen, though this time it wasn't a cover that got pulled, it was the record itself. Before Born to Run was officially released, a small batch of promotional copies went out to radio DJs to build buzz over the summer before launch, printed with different cover text and a plain white promotional label instead of the normal one. Genuinely clean copies of that promo have sold in the neighborhood of $5,000. It's not the kind of thing most people are sitting on, but if you've got Springsteen records in the house from someone who worked in radio decades ago, it's worth a second look. Sometimes the story behind a rare pressing has nothing to do with a mistake at all, and everything to do with plain bad luck. The Grateful Dead's Wake of the Flood had an extremely limited fan club only pressing on dark green vinyl, and through what has to be one of the more ironic mishaps in music history, the copies were sitting in storage before release when a flood damaged a portion of them. Some copies escaped in decent shape anyway, and those have sold for around $5,000. The color is the whole story here. If it's black vinyl, it's a completely ordinary copy. If it's that dark green, you might be holding something the flood somehow spared. And that's not even the story that surprised me the most. Led Zeppelin's very first UK pressing of their debut album originally used turquoise-colored lettering for the band's name, and apparently the band hated it the moment they saw it, wanting something that looked tougher instead of what they got. So the label switched to the orange lettering we all recognize now, but somewhere between 1,000 and 2,000 copies with that original turquoise text had already gone out before the change. That version has become one of the most sought-after records among serious collectors, selling anywhere from $1,000 to $3,000 depending on condition. If your husband is the type who'd recognize a rare pressing on sight, the way mine recognizes an old baseball card, this is the one to have him dig for. Not every valuable pressing requires that kind of luck, though, and the band's second album proves it. When Led Zeppelin II was first mixed, one version came out so loud and punchy that a record executive's daughter blew the needle right off her turntable trying to play it at home. Rather than let that stand, the label quietly pulled the original mix and replaced it with a tamer, quieter version for the wider release. That original loud mix is nicknamed the Hot Mix by collectors, and you can actually still find it if you know what to look for. There's a small stretch of blank space between the last song and the label on any record, and on this particular pressing, that space has a specific code stamped into it. If you see that code on both sides, you're holding the original hot mix, and a clean copy can sell for $500 to $1,000. Unlike most of what's on this list, people genuinely still stumble onto these at yard sales and estate boxes without knowing it. That idea, that the ordinary-looking copy might secretly be the special one, plays out in an entirely different way with the Police's Synchronicity. The label released it with dozens of slightly different cover photo variations, so most of what you'll find in any given collection is common, regardless of which specific cover it happens to have. But a small handful of copies were printed with no photo at all on the cover, and those have sold at auction for $1,500 to $2,000. One especially unusual splatter vinyl pressing, thought to be one of a kind, reportedly sold for around $4,000. If you're holding a copy and it looks unusually plain compared to every other version you've seen, that's worth stopping on. There's a version of this same idea hiding inside Nirvana's Bleach as well. When it was originally pressed in 1989, before the band was famous at all, a small first run went out on white vinyl. Because nobody had any reason to expect Nirvana would matter yet, almost nobody kept those safe, and clean surviving copies now sell for up to $5,000. A slightly less rare blue vinyl pressing runs closer to $3,000. It's a good reminder that the records worth the most money were rarely treated like anything special at the time they were made. The Doors have their own quieter version of this, and it's genuinely one you might already own without knowing it. Most American copies of their debut album were pressed in stereo, so the ones printed in mono actually stand out as the less common version, not the other way around. Some listeners even prefer it, since the mono mix pulls Jim Morrison's vocals forward in a way the stereo version doesn't. A clean mono copy typically sells for around $100, modest compared to everything else here, but a genuinely easy thing to check for on a record you might already have sitting in a crate. That same lesson, that what got left out can matter more than what stayed in, is exactly what makes Bob Dylan's Freewheelin' one of the stranger stories on this list. Because the change that made certain copies valuable wasn't about color or a cover at all, it was about which songs were actually on the record. The very first pressing included 4 songs that got pulled before the album's official release and replaced with 2 others the label felt fit better. If you find an early copy with those original 4 tracks still listed, rather than the songs everyone knows, you're looking at a genuinely rare pressing that has reportedly sold for around $10,000, with private sales rumored even higher. It's the kind of thing that could sit on a shelf for decades without anyone realizing what they actually had. Here's what quietly connects nearly everything on this list, and it took looking through story after story to really see it clearly. It was never simply about how old a record was, or even how famous the artist happened to be. It came down to whether something unusual happened during a very short window, a mistake, a recall, a fan club release gone wrong, before the ordinary version took over completely. Learn to ask what almost went differently with a particular pressing, and you start understanding why one copy of a common album can be worth $10, while another copy of the exact same album is worth thousands. Which brings me to the record most people assume is worth a fortune, and almost never is. If you've got a copy of the Beatles' White Album with a serial number on the cover, I understand the excitement, but I have to be honest with you. A genuinely clean copy is worth around $100, and that's really it for the vast majority of them. The one that actually sold for real money, and I mean real money, was serial number 1, believed to have belonged to one of the actual Beatles, which sold for $790,000. Numbers under 10,000 can carry a real premium. Everything else is simply a nice, ordinary copy of a record that sold in the millions. And that same lesson applies to the very last one, the record almost everyone assumes is valuable purely because it's blue. Elvis Presley's Moody Blue was pressed on blue vinyl by the millions, and it shows up constantly, which is exactly why it's worth about $6. People call in about this one more than almost anything else, convinced the blue color makes it rare. It doesn't. What's actually rare is finding that same album pressed on any other color entirely, black, white, red, yellow, green, or a mixed splatter pattern. Those unusual colors can bring $500 to $1,000, sometimes more. So if you've got Moody Blue on the color everyone assumes is special, it might be the one time on this whole list where common really does just mean common. So before you clear out a single box of records, go back through what you've actually got. Check the label for anything printed differently than you'd expect. Look at the color of the vinyl itself before you assume you know what you're holding. And if your husband swears he's got something rare in that pile he refuses to organize, let him prove it. He might actually be right for once. Tell me down in the comments what's the oldest record sitting in your house right now and who it belonged to first, because half the time the story behind it is worth almost as much as the record itself. And if you're not subscribed yet, hit that button and turn on notifications, because there's another one of these coming soon, and you're going to want to go through your own collection again when it does.